Hello, everybody. It's Jen Todd here with my little love video today. And I'm going to be talking about self-love with Arylo, who I will introduce in a moment. But for those of you that don't know me, I'm a leadership coach and a transformational change consultant. And I recently wrote a book all about love called For the Love of Jude. That is my mother, who passed away 3 years ago. And when I wrote this children's book, I thought, this love is not necessarily what I'm doing in my work, and how do all of these things connect? And I have been working on love and self-love for a long time. And I think it's super important in this month of February, which we always think of romantic love, right? Chocolates, kisses, that there is such a broader definition and application of love. And like one of the most critical things is that we love ourselves. So I asked Arylo to do this little video with me because she is the queen of self-love. She founded International Self-Love Day, which by the way is February 13th, and a self-love school. She's also a transformational teacher and speaker, a best-selling author, and a mentor, and she has actually mentored me, and we work together on collaborative projects around feminine leadership. And so she's the perfect person for me to talk to and for you all to hear about self-love. So Christine, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Hi, everybody. Good to be here. I'm excited to dive in. I've been talking about self-love for a very long time, but there was a time it was not even on my radar. Until it was. So I think it's one of the most important things we can talk about, and also one of the most misunderstood things in our culture. So I'm excited to jump in and see what we can do here in our time together.
Yeah. So, right. So this whole thing about how it's misunderstood. So, for me, I grew up in, Midwestern Christian, rather conservative, right, environment. And I know when I started talking about self-love to people, they thought, like, that's prideful, like self-love, right? It's all about loving others and, kind of putting yourself down. And so I found it surprising, honestly, because, I thought people would get this, right? Like, this is like how we treat ourselves, how we talk to ourselves. So talk a little bit about what truly is self-love and that connection to loving yourself so that you can love others, serve the world, live your purpose.
Okay, absolutely. So when I first looked up the definition of self-love, I think it was about 2006. I was writing my first book, Choosing Me Before We, and I was like, what does the dictionary had to say about self-love? And if you look it up in the dictionary, it is defined as conceit, vanity, and narcissism. And if back then, even up to about 5 years ago, if you Googled it or you went on social media, the hashtags you would see was like anything, and no one under the age of like 50, maybe anyone should look at what it was. It was just full of all kinds of weird sexual stuff. And in our psychological text, which is really disturbing, it is also taught as narcissism. And it's also taught in many religions as that. But if you go back and you look at really things that people like Jesus said, or you look at what is at the root of our wellness, it's love. And so here is the simplest definition I can give you around self-love, which I've been researching and studying now for almost 2 decades. Just think of this: self-love, self-love. So it is just love directed at the self. So the same kind of love, if you were all just to think of someone in your life that you really love, that you find it easy to love. And you think of love's like 31 flavors ice cream. I also grew up in the Midwest. 31 flavors ice cream,
Chicago
right?
girl, yes.
So there's compassion, and there's acceptance, and there's forgiveness, and even self-esteem is a kind of love. Esteem, regard, honoring, respect. I've actually identified there's 10 different kinds of self-love. So self-love is like 10 flavors, what we call the 10 different branches of self-love. So it's just like if you were to think about a person, you wouldn't feel guilty for loving your daughter or your mother or a friend, and showing them compassion and acceptance and being like, hey, embrace your gifts, love your gifts, you're gifted. That feels good. But somehow in our culture, we've got imprinted to believe that if that same kind of love, which is just an energy, comes at us, now it's conceited and vain and prideful in a bad way. And I really believe it's at the root of a lot of what we're seeing in our young people. And we see in the women, people that we work with, I actually think at the root of the emotional unwellness and anxiety and depression and overstriving and overdoing is this lack of self-love. And if I was to break it down one more part or kind of expand it, I would say self-love is the unwavering respect, acceptance, and trust you have for yourself, no matter what. Trust, acceptance, and you can put compassion in there too. Like I said, there's 10 different kinds of self-love. And I've actually done studies where we've studied the 10 branches of self-love and done research and compared it to narcissism. And it has an opposite effect. It's actually the opposite. And this is all documented too, that really most people who truly have narcissism, they're lacking self-love. It's like a deep self-hatred that people
Right. And I'm so glad you described it that way, because it's interesting, because like in this book about my mom, there's qualities of A through M. And one of the qualities that I wanted to write about was humble. She was so humble, but she had such the forgiveness, the empathy, like she literally taught this to people, kids, and, emulated it. And, I have found, and I work with, so many C-level executives, leaders, that whole narcissism in terms of what we would call the egomaniacs, that exactly what you said, that it's like there's an outward expression of the pain and the self-criticism and all of that. And, without self-love, we walk around with that, you call it the inner mean girl, I call it the gremlin, right? That just says we're awful. And then we extend that out to other people, right? That's where it comes from.
The inner critic becomes the outer critic, or the inner bully becomes the outer bully. And so in my research around self-love, two things I found. One is people get weird about the word love. This is like why it's like, it's like you can talk about self-esteem, right? So think about that. It's fine to go out in the world and be like, yeah, I have great self-esteem. When all the women leaders I work with, they're like, I need more confidence. I'm like, honey, you don't need more confidence. You need to know who you are and here first, accept that person, find your own way to express yourself, not look on the outside for what that looks like. And then you'll actually feel confident. But there's something when you take that word love and you bring it into leadership, or you bring it into corporate, or you bring it even into child raising, and people get all weirdo. And I get it. Like I said, I grew up in the Midwest, and when I started on my self-love journey, which happened because I had all the outside external stuff. Like I had the big job, I was getting my MBA, I had the car, I had the fiance, whatever. Relationship ended on the way to the engagement party. Whole story for another time, but why I share that story is we have so many young women, I see this all the time, who are making choices in their career, choices in their relationship, choices who they're choosing to have babies with or share their bodies with, so many choices, because they don't even have the language for self-love. They don't even know what that means because their mothers didn't know, and their mothers didn't know, and this isn't just a woman thing; it's a human thing. So I feel like one of the best things we can do is educate ourselves on what it is, and it's not just this like, oh, love yourself,
right? The soft, fuzzy thing.
And it's like nowhere. It's also not a yes no question. It's not I either have it or you don't. Like you check it off and you're done. I always say self-love is a path, it's a practice, and it's a choice. And so every year on Self-Love Day, February 13th, one of the reasons I founded that was to bring awareness to what self-love is, but also for us to stop and take a pulse check and be like, where am I weak in self-love? Where is it showing up in my life? And where could I strengthen it this year? And then, focusing that year on strengthening it. So it's very practical. It's very practical. And it's very practical.
And I would love for you to talk about that, but I want to say one thing, which is so true, especially in the work I do in professional environments. You don't say the word love, right? Because there's this whole, now you're going to get touchy-feely, and then we're going to lose the results, the success, and all of that. And the truth is, what you said is, if I actually am having the practice of self-love, then I'm actually able to be more successful, to like actually create more of whatever, whatever our purpose is, whatever our job is, or right, if we're a mom, like the better I feel about myself, the way better I am at parenting my daughter, Kenya. I mean, when I'm having a bad day and not loving myself, she is feeling it, right? So,
well, yeah, well, what you're talking about it's about wholeness. So self-love at the end of the day is about wholeness. And when you are whole within yourself and you feel that, and it's real and it's a practice, then the decisions you make, how you show up, come from that wholeness. I mean, if you look at the outside world and the society we live in, it's full of not enoughness. So many leaders and people are making choices. Parents, it's not our fault. Like, we just grew up in a culture where we were told it was bad.
yeah.
But if you could choose between making the choice from the wound, like I'm not enough, I should be this, why am I not this? Or even people who have like high self-confidence, like we're the worst because we can fool everybody. So we have, like, if I have high self-esteem and I believe in myself, then I love myself. Not true. Not true. I mean, I can tell you so many people I have worked with have come to me because they have high self-esteem and they're successful in their career, and they're a mess in their relationships. They date people who are not good for them. They marry people who are not good for them, or they choose, and it's like, that's low self-respect. Or you can have high self-esteem and low self-care, and you're basically a workaholic, or all you do is you give to everybody else and you don't actually get what you need.
I see so much of that. Okay, good. So tell us about these different, the wheel of self-love, like so that people can practically get it in their head, and then we can give them something to do with that.
Okay, so my gift in life is taking big, vast things and making them simple so we can access them. So I'm going to share this methodology called the 5 gates of self-love. And each of these gates are an area, a realm of self-love that if you live it and you embody it, you really have it's like the path back to wholeness. And each of these gates has a promise or a vow. So just we take vows when we get married to others, we make promises to others, but these are promises we make to ourselves. And I'll just say them in order. There's not a specific linear order to them, although the first one is the first one and the last one is the last one. When I tell you why, you'll see why. Okay. And it took me 10 years to really create that strong inner foundation, which isn't to make anyone feel like, oh my God, I didn't mean the video off now. I just want to presence it, because the invitation will be to choose one of these areas that you really want to strengthen this year. And if you focus on that, what starts to happen is your foundation, your inner foundation, becomes stronger. So here are the 5 gates. The first one is, I will never settle for less than my heart and soul desire. That means you have to know what your heart and soul desire. Not your ego, not your intellect. Now we see everything going out, and kind of what you were saying, Jen, about when as soon as we start talking about love in the business world, everyone wants to, like, I call poo-poo and woo-woo and shoo-shoo away. Yeah. But love comes from our heart. Right. The happiest people, the best leaders, they're living from their heart. They're living their purpose. They're living in alignment. So I will never settle for what less than my heart and soul desire. That's number one. Okay. Number 2 is, I only have loving, respectful relationships.
That's big. It's big.
It's big. And yeah, that's a big one. So that's number 2, pretty self-explanatory, but very challenging in application. 3 is, I promise to be kind, patient, gentle, and understanding with myself. And those are what in self-love we call the 4 facets of compassion. So we talk about compassion, be compassionate to yourself, but like, what does that actually mean? Is always the question I'm asking. Great, but like, break it down. So just think that's kind, gentle, patient, gentle.
Patient. I have that one. That's mine. I picked that one this year. Patience.
Me too. I mean, I've been teaching this for 2 decades, and I'm going to pick this one too. But my theme for the year is purposeful patience. It's challenging for patience. It's challenging for me. So that's the 3rd one. Okay. And that's the realm of the inner critic and the inner mean girl. Like, that one will really get you in that area. Number 4, my body is my sacred temple.
Mm,
And so that covers everything. So just think of that, the difference of taking that promise versus like, I'm gonna do more self-care. It's like, great, another thing on my list, right?
yeah.
I know my
I'm gonna go
body.
do a diet or eat well. Like this is like taking care of your physical presence and all that's part of it.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then the last one, which we call the big kahuna of self-love, is I promise to stay true to myself, even if that means disappointing another.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, once you pass that gate, you really have that foundation. And that one's really hard because we have all this programming, right? It's better to give than receive, and don't be selfish, and all of this. But the true teaching is, if you stay true to yourself, it goes back to the first one of knowing what your heart and soul desire, not be a jack ass, not be that, but like you're really coming from love.
Yeah.
The other person might get disappointed, but more love will actually happen, and everyone gets a healing that way. And we stop over giving and over caretaking and over compensating, and all of that leads, of course, to burnout and overwhelm.
Yeah. And it's like so many people, and myself included, like the people pleasing, that whole piece of like, we do it because, oh, someone needs it or wants it, or I'm trying to be nice. Like that's huge. And, when we practice that, actually, it is a total breakthrough. So I can see why it's your number 5. All right. So what can people do with these 5 facets of self-love?
Right. So choose one. So every year on Self-Love Day, we choose either a branch of self-love or a gate of self-love to say, okay, I'm going to focus on this. Take it and write it down somewhere, the promise, write it down where you can see it. And this is how the promises work. They're a practice. So in the moment you're about to make a choice that is self-sabotaging, non-supportive, non-self-loving, based in fear or shame or doubt or guilt or obligation, you pull on that promise and you say that promise to yourself. No, wait. I made a promise this year. I only have loving, respectful relationships. So if that's the promise I'm standing in, if that's the gate I'm standing in, then what's my choice? And, or, like you and I are really focused on patience this year. Like literally the theme of my year is purposeful patience. So if I'm being patient with myself, then how would I choose to go into my business, into my life, into my projects differently versus pressuring myself, right? So that's, instead of pressuring myself, which I do, and I know you do. Maybe some of you do that, right? That is actually also another form of the inner mean girl. Instead of pressuring myself, what would I do if I was being patient?
Yeah, right. So the promise has you get into action and change your behavior, your thoughts and your behaviors.
And your emotions. This is really important. This is why we're working in the realm of love. Love is the realm of the heart. We're super focused on mental wellness now. Thank God, it's about time. But if we do not bring in the emotional wellness, this can't change.
Yeah.
And we are this culture. It's like, I don't want to feel. I don't want to have to feel.
Right. Bring the head and heart together. That's what we always say. If you want a true change, both of them have to be working
plus
together.
Plus the body, because there's real remembrances somatically in our body why we don't make the self-loving choice.
Yeah.
And if you don't know where that's coming from within you, then you just keep recapitulating it. And then this is about, this book is your mother, and there's you, and there's Kenya. So there's 3 generations. So when I founded the Path to Self-Love School, I founded it because this is a generational issue. And it's something that we can say, you know what, I'm not passing these wounds and these imprints onto my children. I'm going to change it in here first. And I'm going to come to wholeness. I'm going to choose the self-loving part. And then every time I see this happen, especially with mothers and daughters, the change is like miraculous. As the mother chooses love, the daughter chooses love. And often the daughters are catalysts for the mothers. And there's this symbiotic relationship. And it's almost like we're saying, you know what, it's not our mother's fault or our grandmother's fault. They did the best they could in the generation they were in. I always joke, our mothers, they basically had Phil Donahue. They didn't even have Oprah. I mean, Phil Donahue tried to do a good job, but he was a boy. And so there's a way that if it's hard for you just to think about this for yourself, think about it for all the people that you're influencing. Like you said, your mother just lived this way. And so that is where our power is. And then our children don't listen to what we say, they watch what we do.
Yeah, right, right. So this is so powerful. So I know you have a place. Where can people go to learn more about this? And there's like a little assessment, right? They can take around this.
Yes. So the assessment's at selflovequiz.com. So super easy. Selflovequiz.com.
Selflovequiz.com.
And
Okay.
if you want to learn about the self-love school and the self-love movement, go to pathofselflove.org.
All right. Great. Good. I love this. This is like the gift, right? The gift to you to learn more about self-love and celebrate on the 13th. I always like to celebrate on the 13th, right? Self-love. And then if they want to get in touch with you, Christine, what's the best way to reach you?
My personal website is christinearylo.com, and that's ARYLO.
Oh, awesome. And for me,
Or check out my podcast. That's another way to stay connected. Feminine Power Time.
Yeah, that's a really powerful podcast. If you are a leader, and I think it's great, actually, even though it's about feminine leadership, for a woman or a man, right, to get in touch with this heart space. And then you can get in touch with me at jentodd.com, and this book for theloveofjude.com if you have some littles that you really want to teach love to. And there's other books and services there. So thank you all for being with us. Thank you, Christine, for giving us a little snippet. I know we could talk for like 2 more hours about this, but I hope that it is actually really like touched people's hearts to really begin to think and feel into what self-love would really be like. So
thank you.
bye for now. Thanks.